So, hi, I am Serona Elton. I am the head of educational partnerships for the MLC. It's my pleasure to be here with you today for this webinar about how to connect to collect and what that means. So a couple of housekeeping things. Firstly, I always like to give props to what we call our webinar queens. They are hanging out in the background. That's Lacey, Kara, and Kayla. They help everything operate smoothly. Could not do the webinars without them. And so they'll be posting things in the chat for you and making sure this all goes well. Also, this is a Zoom webinar for those of you joining us via Zoom instead of, I think we're live on LinkedIn. Welcome, LinkedIn folks. If you're on the Zoom webinar, it works a little differently than a Zoom meeting. What you actually have at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A. That only exists on a webinar. So if you have questions as we go through the session, please drop them into the Q&A. That's where I'll be looking to take questions from. Don't put your questions in the chat. In the chat, we will post information for you. So I'll be talking about a topic, for example, and one of our webinar queens might post a link to where you can find more information about that on our website. But please put your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. So the way this will work is I have a presentation to make to you that answers some of the most common questions, gives you a bit of foundation about who we are and what we do. Some of you may be members already. Some of you may be trying to figure out if you should become a member. And then once I get through the presentation, then we have plenty of time for Q&A at the end, okay? So that's how this will work. So let me go ahead and share my screen into the presentation. All right. And my webinar queens will let me know if I have not shared that correctly. All right, so let's go ahead and get rolling then. All right, so brief overview of the MLC. So let's kind of start at the very, very high level, and then we can dive into more details. So the MLC is smack dab in the middle of a particular revenue stream for songwriters and publishers in the industry. And so we have this role of being between, on the one side, US-based digital music services that offer music for interactive streaming and downloads. Those kind of services have to pay a type of royalties called mechanical royalties to the MLC. And then we pay that money out to the correct music publisher, publishing administrator, songwriter who may be acting as their own publisher, and similar mechanical rights organizations that are based outside the United States. And so we are actually the only authorized party who can collect and distribute this money under a new kind of license created by the US copyright law. And so I know I just threw a bunch of terminology at you. You're like, what is she talking about? Don't worry, this is just sort of the high level explanation. Now we're going to break all this down into a lot more detail. So let's first start making sure everybody understands the difference between a song and a recording, because in order to understand mechanical licensing, mechanical royalties, you have to understand the difference. So under the copyright law, these are defined as different things. So a song or a composition, I use those terms kind of interchangeably. Those are defined in the copyright law as a musical work. So when you hear somebody say musical work, that's what the copyright law defines these as. These are typically created by songwriters or composers and lyricists, and they're often administered by music publishers, right? This is what the music publishing business is all about. So a musical work, as defined in copyright law, is actually made up of the music, so the melody, the rhythm and harmony, and perhaps lyrics, if there are any, right? It's really the music that you could, if you wanted to, you could actually reflect that on a piece of sheet music. You could actually create that music on sheet music, create a representation of that song on sheet music. So for example, the song Yesterday was written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. That is a song. Okay, that's separate from a recording. And in this case, the copyright law calls these sound recordings. These are typically created by recording artists and producers. They're usually distributed by record companies. And a sound recording is really just the fixation of sounds, like you've captured sounds. And that might be of music, right? That could also be spoken word, right? An audio book is a form of sound recording. But we're talking about recordings, audio recordings of musical works. And that is actually also different than a video. That's a whole third separate thing called an audiovisual work. So building on our example, that song Yesterday was first recorded by the Beatles. But then after that, it was recorded by lots of additional artists like Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, Aretha Franklin, and many, many others. In fact, this is one of the most recorded songs of all time. And all of those additional recordings, we like to call cover records because the first artist was the Beatles, and then all those additional records we like to call cover records. That's just how we call them in the industry. All right, so that's a song as opposed to a recording. So I also want to tell you a little bit about the about the Music Modernization Act. You might have heard of this, the MMA, really, really big, important copyright legislation change that happened in 2018. And so the MMA is actually broken into 3 different sections. They're called titles. And Title 1 is called the Musical Works Modernization Act. And it deals specifically with mechanical licensing for digital uses of music. And that's where the MLC comes in. And so the MMA, specifically the section of the MMA, did 3 really, really important things. It created this new blanket license. So what used to happen before the law changed was that traditionally, like a record company would need to get a mechanical license, and they would have to go and research the owners of that musical work and reach out to them one by one. Generally speaking, that was the process. We like to call that work by work licensing. But that's not really efficient when you have digital services, right, that may be having tens of thousands of tracks added to their service every day. And so the copyright law created a blanket license, which means those services only need to have 1 license instead of 1 for every owner of every musical work. So it created a blanket license for particular kinds of activities, interactive streaming, limited downloads, permanent downloads. It mandated the creation of an organization, the MLC, to administer this new blanket license, because what that means is you have to collect the money and distribute the money. So it mandated the creation of the MLC, and it also mandated the creation of a database of musical works ownership information that is available to the public to search, so that this license and these royalties could be administered. So these are really important changes. That's why we're here. It's all thanks to the Music Modernization Act. So let's talk a little more about what this new blanket license does. What kinds of uses of music fall under this blanket license? So firstly, we're talking only about digital audio. Okay, so nothing to do with video. This license is for audio only, digital audio, for uses in the United States only, for what we call mechanical uses. So let's break that down in a little more detail. So interactive streaming. Let me contrast that with non-interactive streaming. I know so much jargon we use in the industry. Okay, an interactive stream is when you go on a service like Spotify or Apple Music, and you can go find your favorite track and you can play it on repeat, okay? That's an example of an interactive service. That's different than a non-interactive service. Non-interactive service looks like digital radio, basically. You can pick the station or the channel, but you can't pick the exact recording you listen to. So Sirius XM, iHeartRadio, the traditional Pandora radio that most of us are more familiar with, those are all examples of non-interactive services. So non-interactive streaming does not involve a mechanical royalty. Interactive streaming does. So interactive streaming falls under this license. Limited downloads Here's another sort of, insider tip, right? So you've probably interacted with limited downloads and didn't realize it. So let's say you were going to fly across the country on an airplane. People are starting to do that again, right? And you went into Spotify and you clicked the toggle that said you wanted that playlist available for offline listening. What's actually happening is that then that music gets downloaded to your device so that you can listen to it even when you have no cell signal and no Wi-Fi signal. But it's limited, right? It doesn't behave like a permanent download like you used to buy on iTunes, for example. Permanent download, that's yours forever. You can move it from one device to another. Limited download, you only have access to it for a limited time, and it's really only through like a particular app. It's not like your file forever. So the copyright law actually lays out these particular kinds of uses, these three uses, as being something that is encompassed under this new blanket license. So what is not under the blanket license? Anything to do with videos. The blanket mechanical license, when we say mechanicals in the United States, we are not including video. We don't apply mechanicals to video in the US. That's not the terminology we use. So nothing to do with videos falls under this blanket license. Nothing to do with public performance. That's not part of this. So, radio airplay, actually streaming includes public performance, but that's separate than a mechanical. So from a mechanical license perspective, public performance is different. This license does not cover the use of music on physical products. So CDs, vinyl records, I've heard cassette tapes are out there. Anything that's physical that has music on it that needs a mechanical license would not be covered by this new blanket license. It's for digital only. And as I mentioned, it does not involve non-interactive streams. It only involves interactive streams. So another way to look at this and understand sort of where things fall in the landscape is what exactly does the MLC do? And what does the MLC not do? And we'd like to tell you about what the MLC does not do so that as you figure out your whole game plan about how to make sure that you've got all the money due to you coming to you, that you're not leaving any money, unclaimed anywhere, it's really important for you to understand what the MLC does and what we don't do so that in all those cases where we don't do something, you have a plan of action. I know you wish there was one-stop shopping. A lot of people wish there was just one-stop shopping. I'm afraid the industry does not have that. The Music Modernization Act fixed a lot of things. It did not create one-stop shopping so that you could just go to one place and get everything. So what does the MLC do? So we establish and maintain this public database, right, as required by the copyright law. And you can actually go to our website, themlc.com. Up in the top right, there is a button there that says public search. You can search our database. It's available to the public. And in fact, if you wanted to, it's not for your typical person, but companies are doing this. You could download our entire database. So that is an option as well. We are administering this new blanket license that is available to particular kinds of digital services, right? Those that have interactive streaming, limited and permanent downloads in the United States. So this is a creation of the US copyright law. So it only covers US activity, not anything outside of the US. So the way it works is the MLC receives data. We receive data from the digital services and we receive money from the digital services, right? They have to pay their royalties to us for the mechanicals. And then we distribute that money out to our members, okay? So that's really kind of the crux of what does the MLC do. So let's talk about what we don't do so that you're clear and you can come up with a game plan. So we are not replacing performing rights organizations in terms of performing rights money for musical works. So you need to join a PRO, either in your own country, if you're not in the US, or in the US, really ASCAP and BMI are available for anybody to join. CSAC, Global Music Rights, you're generally more invitation only. And there's some other smaller ones starting to come into existence. You need a PRO. We are not replacing your PRO, your performing rights organization. We are not replacing Sound Exchange in terms of handling digital performance royalties for sound recordings, right? If you can't remember what Sound Exchange does, just remember sound recordings, okay? Sound, use that sound catchphrase. And so if you are a recording artist, because a lot of you write songs and you are a recording artist, if you're a recording artist, you need to join Sound Exchange. We do not collect the money they do. They do not collect the money we do. We're separate. You need to join Sound Exchange as well if you're a recording artist. We have nothing to do with mechanical royalties for physical products. And so if your musical work is likely to be recorded by other artists, let's say, that are going to be releasing physical products, then you need another solution for that. This blanket license and the MLC only deal with digital mechanicals, not physical mechanicals. Nothing to do with videos, nothing to do with lyrics. I'm sorry, part of me wishes it was all together, but it's not. And so digital services out there that also make videos available, also make lyrics available, they need to get licenses in different ways, not through the MLC. And so you need to figure out how to tap into that. And as I mentioned about the United States, this license only covers uses inside the United States. The MLC is not allowed by law to collect your digital mechanicals from outside the US and pay them to you. We're not allowed to do that by law. And so if you're going to have music streamed outside the United States where there's a mechanical royalty involved, you may need to consider what your other options are about how to collect that money. Okay. All right, so this is a diagram. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. It's on our website, and it helps explain the landscape of digital audio royalties. And so before you get too intimidated by it, start by looking in the top right. There's like a little key, right? It kind of explains how to read the diagram. And so what you have are those different kinds of digital uses I described a little while ago, right? Interactive and limited. Interactive streams, limited downloads, permanent downloads, non-interactive streams. And then depending on which of those we're talking about, there is either 2 or 3 royalty streams coming from that type of use. And which ones they are corresponds to the numbers and the colors. So if we're talking interactive streams and limited downloads, like Spotify, right, there's 3 different revenue flows coming from Spotify. 1, 2, and 3. So let's see what those are. So on the left half of the screen, we're talking about money that flows for use of the musical work. And on the right half of the screen, we're talking about money that flows from the use of the sound recording, okay? And so if we're talking about like a Spotify, for example, you have the number 1, public performance money flows from Spotify. So, on your PRO statement, right, you should be seeing activity from Spotify. Number 2, which is mechanicals, that's where the MLC exists. There are mechanical royalties that would flow from Spotify, also to ultimately publishers and songwriters. And then number 3 is having to do with the sound recording, right? So record companies and recording artists get paid when their recordings are streamed on Spotify. Whereas if you looked at like Pandora, traditional Pandora radio, that involves public performance, and that involves only digital performance of the sound recording, not reproduction, distribution. Far over there on the right, that money would flow through Sound Exchange. So take some time to get familiar with this. I know it's a lot. But I was talking in a webinar the other day, and I said, one way to think about it, this sort of made some folks seem, feel like it was helpful. It's intimidating because you think there's so many different revenue streams that I have to understand what each of them mean and how to tap into them. And that seems overwhelming. But here's what I'm willing to bet for a lot of you. You already know how to embrace lots of different options and learn how they work. Look at social media, right? You know the difference between Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Many of you, not all of you, but many of you. You know how your profiles are different on all 3 of those. You know how they all behave a little differently in terms of what you can post. And you navigated that okay. You probably didn't get super overwhelmed by thinking about how are you going to handle all these social media platforms. So I think try and remove a little bit of the, the fear factor and just say, okay, I got it. I can make some checklists. I understand, how do I get my performance royalties? How do I get my mechanical royalties? How do I get my sound recording royalties? You can do it. Don't let it intimidate you, but spend some time with this diagram because that might be helpful. Okay, so who needs to become a member of the MLC? So this can be both simple and obvious and a little confusing. Let's start with the simple and obvious, which is really the sort of above that line, okay? If you are a music publisher, if you are a publishing administrator, many music publishers are also administrators, or if you are a mechanical rights organization based outside of the United States, then and you are responsible for collecting mechanical digital royalties in the United States, you should become a member. And I think that's really there's not a lot of confusion there, in that those kinds of parties are pretty used to navigating, how do I collect my mechanicals from this country, that country. So not terribly confusing for that group of members. And so if you should become a member, what happens is you connect to collect. That is our catchphrase. That means become a member. In other words, connect with us to collect these royalties. Once you are a member, you then can play your part, another nifty catchphrase, which means make sure that the data about your musical works is accurate, right? Members can and should and must update their musical works data in our database. So that's pretty straightforward. So here's where it can get a little confusing, okay? This has to do with what a songwriter should do. And I use the term songwriters to mean songwriters, composers, and lyricists, just for ease of reference. So if you are a songwriter, composer, or lyricist, and you're trying to figure out if you should become a member, let me explain it to you. Let me start by contrasting it with the way performing rights organizations work, right? PROs. It's the case that every single songwriter, composer, and lyricist should join a PRO. All of you, every single one of you, needs to join a performing rights organization as a writer. You all need to do that, okay? It does not work that way with mechanical royalties. The simplest way to think about it is that really it's the party that controls the publishing for a musical work that needs to join the mechanical rights organization, join the MLC to collect that money. And so if you are a songwriter and you have never signed up with or done a deal with a music publisher, you are self-administered. That is like the default position, right? You are self-administered if you have never done a deal with anybody else to administer your songs. If you have done a deal with a publisher or a publishing administrator or a mechanical rights organization outside the United States, if you have done a deal with one of those parties, you are now administered, right? So that's kind of the opposite. You're administered or you're self-administered, and the default state is self-administered. If you are self-administered, you need to join the MLC because you are acting like the music publisher. You are essentially the music publisher. Now, where it can get even more complicated is, let's say some of the songs you've written are being handled by a publisher, like maybe once upon a time you did a publishing deal, and that publisher is going to continue to administer those songs. So you have some songs you wrote that are with a publisher, but you have other songs you wrote that are not part of any deal you did with a publisher, right? In that case, you're sort of partially self-administered. That's fine. In that case, you will still become a member of the MLC. And for the songs that you administer, you will play your part. In other words, you will update the data for only those songs. But your songs that are administered by another party, they will handle the data for those songs, right? So the answer for a songwriter is not even necessarily just about you as a person. It's really down to what's going on with your musical works, right? If all of your musical works, if all of your songs are administered by somebody else, then you will not become a member of the MLC. But if any of those musical works are administered by you, then you will become a member of the MLC. Okay. And so one other thing I want to point out is, let's say you are not going to become a member of the MLC because you've done a deal with a publisher or a publishing administrator, they handle all your works. I still strongly encourage you to go to our public search and search for your name as a writer, look up your songs, make sure the data is correct. If the data is not correct, you will not be able to update it with us directly. You need to go to your publisher and have them update it. But I can tell you, if I was a songwriter, I would be doing all I can to sort of, very actively manage the data about my musical works, because let's be honest, nobody cares about it quite as much as I do. And if it's not correct, my publisher will be hearing from me about getting it fixed. So please do consider going to our public search if you are not going to become a member, so we can make sure your data is accurate. Okay. All right. So how do you become a member? It's really easy. You go to our website again, the MLC, top right, there's a button that says Connect to Collect. That then opens up a page that kind of explains to you the whole process of signing up. It's really easy. It's totally free. There is no cost to become a member. In fact, the Music Modernization Act, which did so many cool things, it set up a situation where the digital music services, they have to pay our cost of operation separately from the royalties they pay. So what that means is if we collect $100, we will pay out $100 in royalties. We don't keep like a 10% administrative fee from that money, which is not a bad thing. Like performing rights organizations, Sound Exchange, they all have to keep some money so that they can operate. That's pretty standard, but it's just an extra perk that was created by the Music Modernization Act where we pay out 100% of what we receive. So please do become a member if you are not a member already. There's also a really cool opportunity to check your data, whether you are or are not a member. So firstly, once you become a member, you should log into the portal, look at all your musical works data information. There is something that's available to everybody, whether you're a member or not a member. It's called our Data Quality Initiative, our DQI. And here's what it lets you do. If you have your musical works data in a spreadsheet, right, whatever that looks like, if you have your data in a spreadsheet, you can send that data to us in your spreadsheet. We will do a comparison of the data in the spreadsheet to the data in our database. We'll make our computers do that heavy lifting and then send you back a list of where those two things are not the same. Right? So maybe you have a work on your list that's missing from our database. We'll let you know so you can add it to the database. Or let's say you've claimed in your spreadsheet that you own 50% of this song and our database says you own 25%. Then you can get that fixed. So the Data Quality Initiative is available to everyone, including songwriters who are not going to become members, okay? Another great available tool for songwriters, regardless of whether they're going to become members or a publisher handles their stuff. Anybody can participate in this. We've analyzed millions and millions of songs. We're happy to do this for you. It's totally free. So go to our website to check out more information for that. A really important thing to do, and this is going to get easier, and you know, I think right now it can be a little potentially misleading in the portal, but that's in the process of being fixed. Ultimately, we want to know anything you can tell us about the recordings that have been made of your musical works, right? Because digital music services, they report recording information to us, recording titles, artist names, and a recording identifier called an ISRC. That's all part of the data that the digital music services report to us. We then have to match that recording information with a musical work and make that link so that then we can pay you. So when you know information about the recordings that have been made of your musical works, there are fields in our database where you can enter that information. You can tell us the artist name, and you know, Data Nirvana is if you can even tell us the ISRC, that recording code. That helps us match the data and helps us get you paid more accurately. So, so we don't want only your musical works data. We also want whatever you can tell us about the recordings that have been made of your musical works. It's also really important so we can pay you that you get your payment data set up, your banking information, your tax information. That way there's no holdup where we have money for you and we can't get it to you. That would really be a bummer because you want to get paid. Okay, Data Quality Initiative, as I mentioned again, we've had more than 400 participants, over 17 million musical works analyzed, and we also even have recorded webinars that explain the DQI. So please do check that out on our website if you are interested in the DQI. Quick note about paying royalties. So we pay royalties on a monthly basis. Every month you could be getting a check from us, or even better, getting an automated funds transfer straight into your bank account. But there is a cycle, an amount of time that happens between when the stream or the download happens and when you get paid for that, okay? And that's because the digital services have until the end of that month to start compiling all the data for that month and calculating information, sending it to us. We do a bunch of confirming information and calculating information, and then we tell them the amount of money to pay us, and they pay us. There's this whole process that happens, and that process takes 75 days. And so, for example, activity that happened in January is paid out in April. Okay, that's how it works. This is the cycle. This is also on our website. So don't worry if you want to spend more time understanding this. The way it works is on the 10th day of every month, we take like a snapshot of what our musical works ownership data looks like in our database. And then we use that snapshot to pay out royalties related to that prior month that happened before that 10-day mark. And every month we do that. So for example, let's say your musical works information was not in our database by February 10th, then you did not get paid for January on your April statement. But let's say you got it in by March 10th, then what you would have gotten on your statement in May was both January and February. So don't worry if you're a little late on that, that's okay. But you can take some time with this to help you kind of predict when you can be expecting the money if we're able to match it. And remember, you can help us with that matching by telling us information about recordings that have been made of your musical works. That helps prevent any delays. Okay, and so we're so excited. We just got out our third royalty accounting, and we're rocking and rolling. 3 under the belt. Number 4 will be here before we know it. All right. Lastly, I'm almost ready for questions. I'm going to tackle as many questions as I can in this webinar, but I try not to go too deep into any one person's set of facts. However, we have, a team. We are so proud of our customer experience team. I think they're starting to get their own fan club going, honestly, where they're there to help you. They're here in the US. A lot of them studied music business. They learned all about the music publishing business. They are here to help you. And so you can call them by phone, and they actually answer the phone, which I know blows some people away. They answer the phone, or you can communicate with them via email, which you initiate by filling out a form on our website. Or if you're logged into the portal, you can use the live chat feature. And so we have 12 hours a day. We're here to help you Monday through Friday. That's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Central Time. And we also have weekend hours, because I know sometimes during the week this is not possible. Saturday hours, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time. So whatever I can't get answered for you today, or if questions come up in the future, please do not hesitate to call them. They don't just handle simple things like password issues, right? They're there to really help you figure out, should I become a member? Should I not become a member? Something about my musical work data isn't right. How do I fix it? I'm having trouble fixing it. I don't see something in my royalty statement. Why not? All that kind of stuff. They are there to help you. So do not hesitate to reach out. And then if you're happy with them, please shout them out on social media. They really do have a growing amount of shout outs, which is great. Even when people have been, frustrated that something wasn't right about their data, they've been saying the support team has been super helpful. So super excited about that. Okay, and that's our website address. Follow us on social media to also find out about more events like webinars. We're all over socials, and we have a newsletter as well. All right, so let me come out of screen share. Okay, and now we are back. All right, and let me take a look now in the Q&A and see what questions we have there. All right. So Frank is asking, he just joined ASCAP. How do I break down the writer and publisher splits with 3 writers at 40, 40, and 20? Can't figure out how everything gets to 100%. Okay, so if you have 3 writers and they've split up a song 40%, 40%, 20%, right? That sums up to 100%. For the MLC, what you have to figure out is who is handling the publishing for each of those writers. Yeah. So if they each have their own publishing, if each one does their own publishing, then there are 3 publishers, 40, 40, 20. If they've all decided to, hire one publishing administrator to administer all of their works, then that one administrator would register the entire work and claim 100% with us. So we don't get into writer share, publisher share. That's not the way it works with the Mechanical Licensing Collective. It is ultimately only the publisher claiming whatever percent of 100 they are entitled to collect. And if you are a writer and you've never done a deal with the publisher, you are the publisher. And so in that scenario where you have 3 writers, they've split the song 40, 40, 20, and the 3 of them are each handling their own publishing, then the 3 of them will become members of the MLC. each one of them as a publisher would claim 40, 40, 20. Okay, so hopefully that helps you out a bit. All right, Daria, I hope I'm saying that right. Okay, where does Ethereum fit in? Is it number 3 distributor and aggregator? So I think you're talking about a blockchain ledger. So Ethereum and blockchain actually has nothing to do with what we do. The way this works for us is it doesn't involve blockchain. So that's a whole nother topic. They're not a distributor and an aggregator in the same necessarily way that companies like CD Baby or TuneCore are, and we're not involved in digital distribution, right? We're just involved in mechanical royalties that flow from a digital service, right? That has consumers, consumer-facing digital service, money flowing back to the rights holder of the music publishing. Okay, Thomas, classify what administering your works means. That's such a great question. Okay, administering your works, at the highest level, it means like you're responsible for them. Okay, and what does it mean to be responsible for them? It means handling everything. So that would involve getting their data registered with all of the organizations you need to register with in order to get paid. So that means registering it with performing rights organizations, registering it with mechanical rights organizations. It could mean all kinds of other things like handling copyright registration with the United States Copyright Office. Really everything you need to do, all the housekeeping, all the administrative work. So, you know, all of the music licensing, right? Everything really to do with those musical works is what you would be doing if you self-administer, right? Now, with an administrator, sometimes, let's say you sign up with an administrator, they might be handling all of the getting registered, data registered and collecting money, but maybe they're not dealing with things like synchronization licensing, right? So sometimes music licensing is or is not included under administration. You have to look at the arrangement you make with an administrator. But basically, if you've never done a deal with any administrator, all of it is you. It means just taking care of everything. Okay, Peter asks, can I use public search to view my MLC catalog? Absolutely. Anybody and everybody can use our public search. Have at it, go to town. I know it takes a few minutes to get familiar with the best way to construct your searches. You know, you can enter multiple criteria, but yes, everybody can and should check out our public search. Okay, Allison asks, I am a member of the Harry Fox Agency too. My songs were transferred to the MLC from that association. How are we related to HFA now, and what do they do that the MLC does not? Great question. This is also like in the list of the top 5 questions we get. All right, so the Harry Fox Agency, HFA for short, some people say Fox for short, not to be confused with Fox Media, right? HFA. They've been around a very, very long time. There actually was a guy named Harry Fox way back in the day. So they have been handling mechanical licensing for a very, very long time. And the way that worked was a publisher could decide to affiliate with the Harry Fox Agency. And what that really meant was the publisher was basically outsourcing their mechanical licensing work to the Harry Fox Agency, saying, hey, you issue licenses on my behalf, you collect money on my behalf, right? So the HFA was operating on behalf of the publishers. Okay, so over time, HFA expanded its business, right? As companies do, they get into other things. And one of the additional things that HFA got involved with was providing services to digital music companies who needed to secure licenses. So unlike operating on behalf of publishers, the Harry Fox Agency also opened a line of business where they were providing a service to digital music services who needed to secure licenses, right? And so, like, for example, Spotify hired the Harry Fox Agency to go and secure licenses for them. And so when the Harry Fox Agency got into that, they also opened up the door to say to people, hey, you know, maybe you've never affiliated your publishing with us, that's fine. But if you want to participate in this license that Spotify is trying to secure, you could register your works with us to tap into that money stream, okay? And so a lot of songwriters, for example, self-administered songwriters might have signed up their musical works that way with the Harry Fox Agency. So they were not publishing affiliates, but they signed up with HFA in order to tap into these digital mechanical royalties. Okay. So when the MLC was first created, and by the way, the Harry Fox Agency still exists. It's a private business, private company, right? When the MLC was created, we're a nonprofit organization mandated by law, and we have a very specific governance structure, all of which is outlined in the law, right? So we're a very different kind of organization. When the MLC was first created, we had a very short amount of time to go from when the law was passed to having the database up and running and ready to pay people, okay? Very short amount of time. And so the MLC did a search across the industry and asked for proposals from companies that were willing to say, hey, pick us to be your vendor so that we can share our database with you to get you up and running. And so after a search, the MLC picked the Harry Fox Agency to be a vendor and provide services to the MLC. And one of those services is they share the data they have in their database with us, okay? So if your musical works data is in the Harry Fox Agency database, it will also be in our database because they share their data with us, all right? And so what that means is if you are an affiliate with HFA, you do not have to do double data entry between the Harry Fox Agency and the MLC. You do still need to become a member of the MLC because we are going to pay you for those digital mechanicals that are going to flow through the MLC. We are going to pay you, and you'll probably get paid by HFA for other stuff. We are only doing those digital audio mechanicals in the United States. The Harry Fox Agency does all kinds of other stuff. Other than that particular relationship where the Harry Fox Agency data flows into us, you do also still need to register with performing rights organizations and other things like that. So hopefully that answers that for you. Sorry, that was kind of long-winded. Okay, let's see, checking the time. All right, we're good. JB, he has his music distributed by DistroKid, and they have the option to include publishing credits for the song within those recordings, which he has done since he writes his own music. After listening today, I'm not convinced that is enough since DistroKid isn't a publishing administrator, correct? Maybe they do it just to increase the quality of their data. JB, yes, you are onto it. Okay, so companies, so let me be clear. There are companies that do digital distribution of sound recordings, yeah? Originally, we had CD Baby, TuneCore, we have DistroKid. There's a bunch of them out there, right? So if you are an artist, self-released artist, you want to get your music on digital services, your sound recordings, right? You can go through a digital aggregator, right? They provide digital distribution services for your sound recording. That is what DistroKid does. Those companies want you to provide as much publishing credit information on those recordings as you can. And that's true whether it's your own song, like JB wrote his own song, or let's say you're doing a cover of the Beatles, of John Lennon and Paul McCartney's Yesterday, right? So let's say I am making my own cover record of Yesterday, and I'm going to distribute that through DistroKid. Please do fill in the publishing credits that it was written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Please do that, because downstream, that helps get John Lennon and Paul McCartney paid when there's money due to the songwriters from the use of their song in that recording. So yes, DistroKid and all of those distributors want as much publishing information as they can get so that it flows through all of the industry. Absolutely. But you're also right, JB. There's a whole separate thing you need to do for you as the songwriter to collect that money. That money's not coming to you through DistroKid. All right, it's not. It's coming to you through your PRO. It's coming to you through the MLC. Or a publishing administrator, which DistroKid is not. And so you need to separately figure out, as a self-administered songwriter, how are you going to collect that money? And so you have to sign up with a PRO no matter what. You could sign up with the MLC as well to collect your US mechanicals. Or if you think there's a lot of money you might have outside the United States and you also want to look at things that might involve lyrics and video, you could look at some publishing administration services out there that exist, like Songtrust, things like that. So you are correct in that having your music simply flow through DistroKid, your recordings through DistroKid as a recording artist, is not going to get you paid as a songwriter. Okay, so good, you're on it, it's clicking. All right, so who collects international streaming royalties? So for the performance royalty piece, the PROs do. So if your song is streamed on Spotify in France, generally speaking, you should see your performance royalties come back to you through your ASCAP or BMI PRO. Your mechanical royalties for that, though, cannot flow through the MLC. So you would have to sign up with a publishing administration company. You could look at the mechanical rights organization in France, sign up with them directly. So there's a couple of other things you have to consider in terms of collecting your international mechanical royalties. But the MLC cannot collect that for you. What you might want to do to help understand all of your options would be to look to some of the songwriter organizations like SONA, Songwriters in North America. They might have some great resources to help self-administered songwriters understand how to tap into all the revenue streams. Okay, does it cost to join a PRO? So I can't give you the firm answer. I think there may be a small one-time fee, but you would have to check with the PRO and find out. There is no cost to join us. Okay, all right, just looking here. Also asking my webinar queens, can one of you please tell Brianna that I will not be on that next meeting until top of the hour? Thanks. Okay, so Michael, we worked heavily with you guys with the HFA handoff as an administrator of royalties. Can you ballpark a rough percentage of HFA dropout that the MLC now picks up? No. By that, I think you mean how much mechanical royalty money is now flowing through the MLC instead of HFA. I don't have that number. I don't know offhand. So maybe that is something you maybe want to ask of our publisher services team and let them try and track that down for you. I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that one. Okay, Janice, as a publisher of digital sheet music for sale, okay, with collaborators who own their publishing, should I register them with you? Okay, so as a publisher of only the digital sheet music, you're not going to be involved in any of this because mechanical royalties is not, there is not a mechanical involved when a musical work is reproduced and distributed in sheet music. Under the US copyright law, sheet music is considered a copy as opposed to a phono record. And a phono record is a CD, a vinyl, a download, an interactive stream. So there is no mechanical for sheet music in terms of mechanical licensing. And so sheet music is not covered by the blanket mechanical license that the MLC operates. So you as the publisher of sheet music would not be involved in registering those claims with us at all. However, what you could do just to be, you know, a good citizen would be to tell those companies, those collaborators who own their own publishing that they should join the MLC as a self-administered songwriter or publisher, or, you know, and you mentioned that you are actually with HFA. If they're with HFA, then the comments I made earlier would apply that they still need to join the MLC, but they don't have to do double data entry. So, yes, you'd be an amazingly helpful person to let them know, make sure they're taking action to collect their mechanicals, because that money is not going to flow through you. So they're lucky to have you, Janice. All right, last question, and this is from our LinkedIn folks. For those with their own publishing company and registered with a publishing administrator, will the song's publisher on the MLC search function eventually show up as my company or the pub admin company? Okay, so when you look at our, and this is just so everybody else knows what I mean when I answer you, if you look in our public search, sometimes you see a situation where the party that is entitled to a percentage of a song is just the publisher. And that has one color. I think it may be, it's either the red or the yellow. Publishers have one color, administrators have another color. Forgive me for not remembering which is which. But the party that has the percentage symbol next to them is the party collecting the money. And so whether or not we show, let's say I am Serona Songs, and I am administered by Cobalt Publishing, okay? Whether that shows up as only Cobalt Publishing, or whether that shows up as Serona Songs and the administrator's Cobalt Publishing, that all has to do with how Cobalt registers it with us. And so today we are capable, absolutely, of showing the name of the publisher and then the name of the administrator separately. Whether or not that data has been registered with us that way would be down to the party who has registered it. So if you're not seeing it that way, you should talk to your publishing administrator to say they need to register those works with us differently, where they are giving us the publisher name separately from their name. Okay. All right. Let's see. We still have time for two more. Okay. All right. So Kurt asks, and he acknowledges he might have answered this. So Songtrust, I mentioned them briefly. Songtrust, will Songtrust be the interim registrant for songs at the MLC, or the songwriter self-publisher direct to the MLC? Okay, great question. So here's what can be confusing to songwriters about companies like Songtrust, about CD Baby Pro Publishing, TuneCore Publishing. Note that's different than TuneCore sound recording distribution, or CD Baby sound recording distribution, or DistroKid sound recording distribution, right? Now I'm talking publishing administration services. If as a songwriter, you sign up a musical work, your song, with a publishing administration service, you are not self-administered for that work anymore. They are the administrator. So let's pretend that I've written 20 songs, okay? And 20 of those, let's pretend of those 20 songs I've written, 10 of those songs I signed up with Songtrust. Songtrust is now the administrator of those 10 songs. They will register those with the MLC. They will collect that money with the MLC. They will pay me that money. And that's not interim. I mean, that is for as long as that administration arrangement with them exists. But I had another 10 songs I never signed up with Songtrust. I am the publisher and the administrator of those other 10. I will register those 10 works with the MLC directly. I will collect that money directly. So you have to look at each individual musical work and say, who is the administrator of that musical work? And if you signed up that musical work with Songtrust or CD Baby Pro Publishing or TuneCore Publishing, then they are the administrator of that song. They will register that song. They will collect the money for that song. Okay. It's really down to like a song by song analysis. Okay. And then Janice, one follow-up, and this will be our last question. Okay. So the version of sheet music is co-owned. How do we protect ourselves if they are used, recorded, performed? Do I register the new versions of BMI and HFA? So that's getting into a lot of nuances about the sheet music, right? And by that, if I have a musical work and we create sheet music, then the owners of the musical work own the sheet music unless they've assigned that somehow to a sub-publisher. If a custom arrangement of that musical work is made, now you have a whole nother question. You know, you have the arranger now is listed as a contributor, and you have to agree if they're going to get any share of the publishing or not. That gets into quite a lot of complicated stuff. I will say it's down to the party that controls the rights to collect mechanicals, which is generally not a sub-publisher who controls only sheet music. The party that has the right to control the mechanicals for a musical work or any arrangements that have been made of that musical work, that is the party who would be registering that with the MLC, and likewise for the performing rights money. So beyond that, it gets a little more nuanced. All right, so last question then, at PRS for Music. So PRS for Music is a organization in the United Kingdom, and they are sort of a combination of what was PRS, which is their performing rights organization, and MCPS, which is their mechanical rights organization. So now members log into PRS for Music in the UK, if you're based in the UK, to see your performing rights and mechanicals information. So it's saying that in PRS for Music, it shows Songtrust next to my songs with CD Baby. Why does that occur? So, okay, here's my belief, but I am not the authoritative person on this. You should look on the CD Baby website FAQs for this answer. I believe that CD Baby provides their publishing administration services by connecting with Songtrust, right? It's like they've done a deal with Songtrust. But you need to look that up at the CD Baby website and confirm when you go through CD Baby Pro Publishing, how is that happening? Are they partnering with Songtrust? So that's something only they can answer for sure, but I believe that's what you're probably seeing. All right, so we are going to call it a wrap for today. Thank you very much. I know we threw a lot of data at you. So well done for sticking in there. Great questions. Don't hesitate to reach out to our customer experience team if you need any help. They are there for you. Very, very happy to help you. We know we all are here to get you paid, and we know it can be confusing to figure out how you can get paid. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.